Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's banned
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. It's the Dark Knight Rises episode.
Yes.
I didn't want to
I
do
just
it.
want to say before we actually begin recording, I've been waiting for this episode to record this episode with you for a long, long time because I know you have such strong feelings about this, and I
Yeah, it's a
really want
shit
to hear
movie.
all of them. Yes. I want to hear you shit all over it. But in the way that's just like it's just gonna de-ravel this so well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this episode.
No, I just like to joke about how shit it is. I don't like it, but it's just funnier to take a strong stance.
Yeah.
It
Totally is.
Realistically, I do think it's not a good movie that has really great ties to the comics and some cool scenes.
I think the very, very cool scenes for sure. I think one of the biggest things about this movie I have to ask myself is when Nolan set out to create a Batman that would actually exist in our world, he kind of factored in a personality trait of like everyone would want to quit something. And I'm like, that is the fun, like whether or not that is what he thought or whatever, you're right. I just think it's not true to the characters in this one. And that's why it's very, well, not true to the central character anyway. And it's very disappointing.
I think having rewatched it last night, I do think it's just story issues. It is not a well told story. I think that it works in conjunction with the two movies that came before it. I do think that if you're telling the story of someone who always thought like, I'll just do this for a couple years and then that will inspire the city to be better, that's the story you told. But my main issue comes from right away we start the movie and he's given up for 8 years.
Yeah.
Not because the mission was complete, which already undercuts everything you built up before in the first two movies, but because his girlfriend died. And we've talked about it ad nauseum. I don't really want to get back into it, but I was never really sold on the Rachel Dawes stuff. So like
me neither. To be perfect,
I get that he's just saying that that's what it is. I mean, and when I say he, I mean Christopher Nolan as the writer, and I believe his brother wrote this as well. Like I get that that's the idea, is that he is so hurt by the loss of his one true love that he stops being Batman. But the problem is then like he still goes back into it, and I'm like, why add that hurdle for yourself? I get that you can't have him just be like okay with it, but like that could be something that's making him not as effective. But I don't know about the whole like he quit, because the whole point is he has a goal and he's going to meet that goal, and by the end of the movie you're supposed to feel good about him meeting that goal. Which you're kind of like, well, I don't know, he just seems like a quitter, and this is another time that he quit. He's just like, yeah, I did it again. I found my girlfriend. Bye.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel as heroic as the music and the imagery wants it to feel.
It's just, to me, one of the things that I was looking at this, and one of the ideas I was looking at was like, was he convincingly retired? Did he think he was actually retired? There was no crime left. There's a lot of dialogue within the movie that goes to suggest that, right? The Dent Act, putting teeth in crime, like all this kind of stuff, putting all those the stats that they have, all those criminals behind bars, and then Blake going like, pretty soon you'll have us chasing down overdue library fines and all that kind of stuff. Is it the result of the actual success that came from the Dent Act, and then the de-raveling of the lie on this one? Like, to me, is that the thing? Is did he actually give up, or did that actually stop a lot of the crime from happening.
No, the movie isn't saying that. The movie is saying you need a Batman. It's just
No, I know what it's saying, but do you think they wrote it from the perspective of, okay, this is how we can justify him giving up? Like he just kind of
No.
used success to give up. Like even Bane says,
No.
like victory has defeated you. You don't think that at all?
No, as I said at the beginning, the whole thing is he wanted to inspire the city to do the right thing, and he found his John Blake. That's what I mean by it works if you're basing it off of the first two movies.
Right.
First movie, he sets it up. I need to inspire people to do better. Second movie, he's like, oh, maybe it's Harvey Dent. And then this movie is saying you can't have it be Harvey Dent. Through the well, one, he was never going to be the hero.
Right.
So that's what the John Blake thing represents. It's a new person who isn't Harvey Dent, but also you can't do it through Law and Order because those are the shackles that bind you, and that's what John Blake is saying at the end. So no, that's why I'm saying no, that's not what the movie's saying. The movie is saying you still need that, and it's from the point of view of, as I said, like filtering through all those things. He didn't want to do it forever. He wanted to inspire other people. He found the person that he inspired. He can go now. The problem with the movie is that it starts with him already having given up. So it muddies the waters. But what I'm saying is I can track what is happening, is that he found the person he knows can do it. That's why he gives him access to the Bat Cave and everything. That's why he resets up the bat signal. But it is that he's like, okay, he can do it now. I don't have, it's not on me anymore.
Yeah, the mantle is actually given up or something like that. I do appreciate what Nolan does from that perspective. He's interested only in completing his trilogy, not really, and then sprinkling like hints of comic book stuff throughout, like right when like the officer stuff in the beginning where it's like, oh, you're in for a show tonight, like those kind of things are great to sprinkle in, but he's more interested obviously in completing his own story, which is that trilogy of inspiration, false idols, and then came down to Blake, Robin, who is, like, regardless of whether or not you like that, it does complete its own story.
Yes. Yeah. I've never said it didn't complete the story. I just think it was a poorly told. It was a poorly told third act to this story.
I agree. And to me, I just don't know if a lot of things didn't connect, or it just, to me, the biggest insult here is the mishandling of Batman, because Batman doesn't give up, like, ever. Right? I can get the idea of I want to inspire, but even then, in that regard, we're expecting some sort of mentorship, Batman Beyond style kind of thing, right? Where Bruce is still involved. And that's what irks me about this. So I know he kind of leaves it open-ended where he's like, oh yeah, he does put up the bat signal, and then you do confirm seeing him with Catwoman and all this kind of stuff. So it does leave it very, very open-ended. But Nolan's also not interested in telling any more, obviously.
I don't see it as open-ended.
You don't see it as open-ended? You think it's like absolutely okay,
he's done. John Blake's the new Batman.
You don't think there's like a potential like, oh, this is a big enough reason for him to come back kind of situation?
It's also the reason why I don't really like the movie is all the discourse around it. People are like, oh, but he is dead, and that's just I'm like, no, the movie is pretty simple. Like the movie isn't really dealing in ambiguity. It's very
not
clear.
Trying to be Inception. It's not like that Inception level. Is it confirmed or is it not, or like whatever, or was Alfred dead the whole time, or like there's no level of that in this movie. It's very straightforward. No, he's alive. He pulled it off. He's alive,
but more than that, it's that the movie is telling you what the end will be basically from the beginning. Like every scene is building towards what the end will be, and not every scene, but there's a lot of conversations about like, hey man, like, yeah, you did this already. This isn't how you help the city. You in particular, Bruce Wayne, this isn't how you do it. There's a lot of conversations about that. Even Catwoman's like, you already gave the city everything you have. Like, what are you doing? Stop it. So I don't see this as an open-ended thing. I see it as very clearly he found the guy he wants to carry it on.
Right.
He set him up to be able to carry it on. This is John Blake's thing now.
Cool.
He got his happy ending. He gave his mother's pearls to Catwoman. That is what it is now. And they had their blank slate
He's moved on.
protocol thing. So really, they're out.
Yep. All right. I mean, it doesn't matter either way. It's just like one of those things where, like, does this need to be debated? No, because Nolan's not going to return for a fourth. And Bale's not.
He's not going to return. And yeah, I mean, if you do think it's open ended, then I feel like, and I'm not talking about you in particular. I'm saying if you are someone who looks at it as open ended, then I feel like that makes it less of a potent trilogy. It only works if it completed the loop.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you highly respect it for accomplishing what it does. It fumbles the last act, but you
I don't mean the last act of the movie. I mean the movie as a whole is a last.
Oh,
act.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Like if you saw Begins, Dark Knight, and then Dark Knight Rises as 3 acts, then this is the final act for sure. And it fumbles. Without a doubt, it fumbles. But in a very, very fun way at the same time. Like, I enjoy the things that he does do very, very well in this movie.
So I guess I'll say what I like about the movie, which is how they tie in comic book lore. And I mean, again, putting shackles on themselves, they want it to be realistic. So how do they do that? Well, Bane, I think, is an amazing villain in the sense that, like, we all know Bane as the guy that can press a button, he gets the venom in him, and then he hulks out basically and smashes things. And Nolan has kind of reversed that. So it's the venom that's just keeping him docile the whole time. And it's that moment that Batman undoes that he starts, like, breaking columns, and, like, so you still get that moment of, like, oh, there's a second level to Bane. Like, you already thought he was hard, and he can go even worse. Like, when you remove I mean, I'm calling it venom, but it's whatever medication is being pumped into him. I like that stuff. I like the metaphor of the Lazarus pit of he goes in and he comes back out rejuvenated. I think that's cool. I even like that. Like, I would rather he just was Robin, but like, or Nightwing or whatever. But I like that they combine Dick Grayson and Tim Drake to make John Blake, in terms of you've got the orphan. So then he resonates with Bruce Wayne that way, but also the detective Tim Drake, who actually was able to piece everything together and be like, oh, you're obviously Batman. And like, I like that it's easier way of getting around things of just combining those two. And I mean, they had Talia al Ghul, but I'll get into that because that's part of stuff I don't like. But yeah, I think those 3 things are very strong in terms of having your cake and eating it too, in terms of having these comic book things, but being like, but it has to be realistic. I thought Bane was really well executed in that sense. The Lazarus pit was really well executed that way. And it's like kind of a half and half with the John Blake character, because it does take 2 characters I like and put them together. It's just, he didn't really want to go anywhere with it other than, and he'll just continue as Batman. And it's like, okay, great. I do like Catwoman in the beginning of the movie. She kind of gets washed out by the end of it, but like, her first couple of scenes are very strong. Like, her stealing the pearls from Bruce Wayne, that turn she has when she's like, oops, no one told me it was unbreakable or whatever. That's really good. And everything she does with the senator or whatever, who she like takes as like collateral and like is able to get out of there because she's like, well, you used a cell phone, so you brought this on yourself. Like, all of that stuff is good. And then you're kind of like, and then she just becomes like a sidekick. But she's very strong in the beginning. And that is everything I like. And I like Bruce and Alfred together, but the movie takes that away from me pretty quickly.
I agree. I think this is well, I agree with all those points. Obviously, Bane, and I know we'll get into Bane a lot more, but everything about Bane is just absolutely fantastic to me. There's nothing about Bane that I would want to change. And it's such a strong performance for such a weird performance too. It's great. The reverse, everything you said about Venom, whether or not we can call it that, is fantastic. I think we're not going to disagree a lot on the things that we like about this movie, because through past conversations, we've definitely confirmed like, oh, that character switch is the strongest thing I've ever seen. Like it's and just even the way they wrote her character being like, no, this is um, the attention of like, oh, this is the graphite lifted, not traceable, all that kind of stuff. It's fantastic, and all those pokes and jabs that Alfred has. I think one of the biggest things that sucks about this movie is that it tells you the part where it forces you to like, oh, we told you uh, Bruce is doing this Howard Hughes thing or making jokes about it and all this kind of stuff, isolated. And then he comes out of retirement just to get knocked down again, just to come back up. It's like repeat of the same beat, and that really sucked in that sense, where it's like, okay, we got to get him out of retirement, then he's got to get back into like the pit and come out and all this kind of stuff. The repetitive notion of that like just slowed everything down so much, and it's that part really just, it was necessary, but it just slows everything down, and that's what is such a big issue for me in this movie. You're right, the way they wrote it's not great, but like the specific subsections of this movie are absolutely fantastic.
Well, I don't know about absolutely fantastic, but yeah, there's strong stuff. I think yeah, my big thing is we're already in the third Batman movie. It's not called Gotham Rises, it's not called Bruce Wayne Rises. It's called The Dark Knight Rises. And I feel like the movies have done a good job of setting up The Dark Knight is Batman. And I don't mean that just like I mean like The Dark Knight is that aggression that he has and the bad stuff he has that pushes him to do the things he does as Batman. And this movie is all about getting rid of that. So it's weird to call it Dark Knight Rises because you don't introduce him until I think it's 48 minutes into the movie.
Yep.
And then you put him on ice and then you bring him back again and it's the end of the movie. So it's like what, and the whole point is that he's gone after that. So it's not really the Dark Knight Rising at all.
Yeah, it's Dark Knight.
It's the Dark Knight says goodbye. But like it's
Dark Knight mentors, or the Dark Knight internship.
Right. And so like I feel like what was the point of like not having it? Because as you said, for the story they want to do, and I understand, it's also what I liked that they took elements of Nightfall, like they took well, the big thing being the back-breaking thing. So if you want to do that, why would you wait 48 minutes to get into it just to put them back on it? That should be the first scene. That should be your opening. That should be your opening, is that they meet up. It shouldn't be that he was ever retired. But I mean, for me, I don't see that as like a good storytelling thing. Like I feel like it should be that like he goes right into it with Bane, and because he's so distracted because of Rachel or whatever, then he gets his back broken, and then you can do all your fun stuff, whatever. But it makes for a better movie of actually watching him build himself back up instead of having it be like, oh, we're kind of in the second act and he's getting his back broken.
I agree. I agree so much with what you're saying, because one of the things I would have liked for this to be is that, for example, Batman takes that international aspect further and like, okay, let's say, for example, that Dent Act was successful in reducing the crime in Gotham. Batman is coping his way that we know how to beat people up. Like that's his coping mechanism to deal with his parents and stuff like that. Not coping mechanism. I'm just joking with that. But that's his thing, right? So why would the Rachel Dawes thing like spin that in a different direction altogether? It just, to me, he would further double down. I would love to see the writing go like, okay, we're starting off with Bruce or Batman, ideally Batman, fighting crime internationally, or at least we're hearing about that. He arrives back in Gotham because crime is spiked up because Bane has done that Dark Vault, like that whole storyline, and then like there's action right away, like good quality action, and then breaks his back, and then we have a good story. Like I like the idea of like him never giving up. That's the idea, and him fighting crime all over the world, as opposed to just like, no, I'm just taking care of Gotham. Like
I think then you're altering
Oh, I'm
the
altering it.
fundamentals. No, I don't mean just the movie. You're altering the fundamentals of the entire trilogy if he's doing it internationally. The whole point is that he's trying to protect Gotham.
Yeah.
And that is also, I would say, a main function of Batman is that he protects Gotham. That's his domain. He doesn't really it's why things like Justice League can be fun, because he's kind of like, I don't really care. Like, you need
Right.
my help, fine, but like, I'm about Gotham. If it's about Gotham, cool. And then so that's why I'm saying, like, I understand all the beats they wanted to hit. It's
Right.
just you put them in a bad order, and
Mm.
you shouldn't have it that he gives up like that.
Yeah.
It's why it is. I feel like rewatching it, why it muddies the water for people at the end of like what is actually happening, because
Mm.
it's like, well, I don't know, like, did he like it makes you forget about what his actual goal was in the first place, because you're like, I
Mhm.
don't know, he just came back from being sad that his girlfriend died. Maybe this is just like a nice dream Alfred's having, instead of being like, oh, this was what he was working towards the whole time.
Mhm.
This is the end. He got it. Um and I do, yeah, and so I feel like him going international is kind of like, I don't know. It's also the reason I don't, and I don't know what you would do to change it, but the reason The Dark Knight is my favorite of the trilogy is because it is a personal story. It's like him struggling with the fact that, like, he really doesn't want to have to keep doing this whole time, and how can he get someone to do this. That's the back. It's not, oh, there's vapors in the air making people scared, or there's a bomb we have to get rid of.
Right.
It's so, like, yes, there's the fairy thing, but he's not really like involved in that, because the movie's already like, well, humans will take care of that. Like just human nature took care of that issue.
Right.
This is all about like him being like, good, see, people are like learning to do the right thing. Like that was just further confirmation. There is like, it is Joker who is the weapon of mass destruction that's going through the movie. It's not an object or a thing, a MacGuffin rather. Like that's why Dark Knight's my favorite, and so that's why Dark Knight Rises would never hit that level for me, because I'm like, it's a bomb. Like, didn't they make fun of that in the 60s, where he's just like, literally the last end of the movie is him trying to find where to drop the bomb, and it's like, that's, I feel like Adam West did that. Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing here? um oh,
Yeah.
some days you just can't get rid of a bomb. Like, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I get it, you just needed something to do, but it was just like, I don't care about this stupid core bomb, like,
Yeah.
clean energy thing. Like, it's such an added layer to something that's already just trying to close things out.
Yeah. I. You're right. It's just. Oh God. That. You're right. The issue is. Well, my favorite of this trilogy is obviously Dark Knight. And that one sets the bar so high that this one, in its writing and its execution, it's too simplistic compared to the Dark Knight and how personal a story that is. And this one is just like, okay, we got to tie up loose ends. We got to finish up the story beats we wrote in 1 and 2. Like,
Mhm.
that's what it feels like to me. And then there's just like, let's throw this in, let's throw this in, let's throw this in. That ultimately became a jumbled mess, because I'm interested in what you said. If they had like shot it or wrote it in entirely different beats or resequenced it,
Mhm.
something like that. If you said something like that, and I'm very curious of what you mean by that. Like, how would some of those ideas look?
Well, I already said it. Like, just start with him getting his back broken, and then you can still have your beats of like
Oh,
who
right.
is
Okay.
Bane or whatever. Like, I think that it takes way too long for Batman to be on screen.
Yeah.
I think he only shows up like really like worthwhile wise like 3 times, maybe 4.
Mhm.
um in a 2 hour and 42 minute movie. Like, it's not like it's not like it's a short one. It's the longest one, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
um and so like, yeah, you're not like, it is really about this thing for Gotham, and I feel like they that makes sense. That's on brand. This fight for Gotham, that's what he's always been about. It's bringing back the people who trained him, so it's like coming full circle. I get all that, but it's like he breaks his back, and so then, yeah, you're just got like, with I feel like the first two movies, it feels like all forward motion. Like you're always like, okay, yeah, we're building to something, we're building to something. And this movie, it's kind of like, well, this we're gonna have to take a break now, or like we're waiting for things to happen as opposed to being like driven forward.
Mhm.
There's a lot of waiting for Batman, then there's like waiting for him to get better, then like I guess waiting for him to defuse the bomb. I don't know. That one's just a personal pain point for me. But I just feel like it doesn't feel as like driven, and I
Mhm.
mean that like more like there was an actual drive and an engine moving things forward.
I agree.
Feels like
This
as an
was
audience member, you're kind of like, okay, well, like when's this gonna
yeah.
happen?
The it was like really it's really disappointing to be like this one's very very much like check out the breaks and the psychological issues that he has to deal with alone. And I'm like, well, yeah, we always know that Batman as a character is going to do everything alone, or largely has, except for the Bat family.
Well, I would say
And
this. I feel like you say that a lot. I wholeheartedly disagree that he's someone who does things alone.
well,
His
he's
whole
always
thing is that he's
doing
trying to
this.
recreate a family.
True.
That is always his thing. Just
Yeah.
because it's not a bunch of like masked superheroes, other than the Bat family, which is pretty extensive.
Yeah,
But always got some form of a Lucius Fox, Alfred, and
I
Commissioner Gordon.
agree. But my thing is, I always see every portrayal of that post the dark, like the post oh God, what was his name? The guy that did the very serious Frank Miller one, right? After that, the serious works, I've always seen Batman as just not trusting people, not like having people around him to
He
be
wants
like,
to control how people help him, but he
yes,
still wants to
correct.
help.
But to me, that's yes, that's very that I guess I wouldn't say that that's the closest thing. It's more like manipulation or like control or whatever it is.
Whatever
So
you want to call it,
whatever it
he is
is.
not a lone wolf.
Yes, he's not a lone wolf in that regard, but he's a lone wolf in his from a mental standpoint. He always has a backup plan for everyone else and all that kind of stuff, right? His paranoia isolates him to that degree.
I mean, yeah,
but
you can have paranoia, but
yeah,
it doesn't make him a lone wolf. Like that's he's paranoid and he does want to recreate. The whole thing is he lost his family. It's
right,
different versions of him recreating that family unit
right,
throughout every iteration you can think of.
right. But yeah, that is true. However, this one is just the slowed down beats and how he has to deal with this one, the psychological torture of Gotham burning and destroying itself isn't that effective to me as much as it could have been. And that's so weird because like the Joker, when we compare that psychological torture of what Joker is doing to Gotham, I feel it much much more in that one versus this one. It's just there's such a big giant disconnect with what Gotham's going through
For
and
me,
what
yeah, I agree with
Joker is.
you. I agree
Yeah.
with you 100%. There's a disconnect, but I think it also comes from me being like, why does he care now? Like, this is all he didn't care for 8 years because he lost his girlfriend, and now it's like, and I get it. Bane just came back and is doing more stuff, but I don't feel like that. I feel like that's just complicating issues. Like it should be that he's always driven to be like, I need to clean up the streets. Like
Yeah. It's
it's the
because
movie is showing you that stuff is still happening to people. It's just not
yep,
Joker level.
right.
But like stuff is happening to people, and he's like, well, I can't get involved. I had my heart broken, and I feel like that's what makes it weird when like someone comes around and he's like, I gotta and it's like, well, couldn't he have just always been like that? You can still have the same dialogue of Bane being like, victory made you weak, because yeah, he doesn't have that caliber of villain to
Yeah.
go up against. And so when he has to go up against a Bane, you still can have Alfred be like, what are you doing? Like, you can't face someone like this anymore. You've had 8 years of like being able to coast.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, that's a great point. Like 8 years of just beating up like small level drug criminals or whatever.
Yeah, and
Like,
like getting lazy and not
yeah,
not being as vigilant, but like it's like he just wasn't involved before, and now
like,
I'm not an idiot. I get it. Story wise, obviously, someone coming into your town and
yeah,
taking over would make you be like, I care now. But it's like, why couldn't he just care the whole time and then be faced with, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, then get it proven to him with the backbreaking, and then you build it back up in him.
Or maybe you could just like really build up the Bruce Wayne indulgence aspect of it, where it's like, no, like he got lazy and he's like his Bruce Wayne persona has partied it up a little bit too much.
Well, because that would never happen, because he isn't Bruce Wayne, he is Batman, and the whole reason to do Bruce Wayne is to
convince people he's not Batman.
Yeah,
I get that. It's just like
there's so if he's not being Batman, he's just done.
Yeah, it's just you're right. At the end of the day, it's not a very well written movie, but there's individual elements of it that's very well done, and that just doesn't connect together very, very well for me. Like that's the biggest thing. Like to me, the best thing about this movie is Bane. The best thing.
He's really good.
He's really, really good. And even then, there's like parts in this one where I'm like, this is kind of dumb about Bane, in the sense where it's like, you can't, in a plane scene where he's like, nobody cared who I was until I put on the mask. I'm like, no, people obviously cared who you were. Like, people are looking for you and all this kind of stuff. Like, and
what? No, they didn't. He's referencing when he was in that pit.
Well, yes, but it's such a weird thing. Like, I felt like they did care.
No. The whole point is he was a faceless nobody until he got beat up, put on the mask, and took control of what he wanted to do.
Oh yeah, he was looking for the League of Shadows. Never mind. I don't know why I had a point to pick with that. It was weird. Anyways,
there is dumb. Like, I get that people are like, why didn't he just do this? And I'm like, because the whole point was to mentally torture him. Like, I get that it's like convenient, but it's also like, I understand the logic that he has of like, yeah, I'm gonna take you to the pit and you're gonna watch your city burn. Okay, good. I'm glad. And then you'll be really broken. And I've heard people be like, that's dumb. Why did he do that? Why did he take time out of his mission? I'm like, it's all the mission. That wasn't like let's take a pit stop to the pit. It was like, this was always part of the plan. Yeah. I think what's good about this, obviously, is the only other version of Bane on the big screen was in the Joel Schumacher one. And this shows that like, Bane isn't just muscle, like he is a tactician as well as Batman. So I appreciated that. And yeah, rewatching it, I was like, obviously you're gonna get compared to Heath Ledger, but I do feel like this movie doesn't suffer from having a lesser villain. It just suffers from not having a good story. The villain's good.
Villain's fantastic in this.
And as I said, I like a lot of the beginning of the Catwoman stuff, and then it's kind of like I mean, yeah, like stuff like, hey, the like what's it called, the clean slate protocol, like, and even Ben Mendelsohn makes fun of it. I'm like, why are they like pointing out how dumb this is? Why didn't they just let it be? Like, it just that part also is kind of like, oh yeah, and she needs some kind of like blank slate protocol. I'm like, yeah, no one thinks that's a good idea, and then in the movie you made it seem like it was a stupid idea too. That's weird. You should have just really built it up or not said it as much. Yeah, so then once she gets into that, I'm kind of like, man, I'm not that interested. I'm like, I don't get why John Blake wasn't like suited up like a Nightwing type as well, just because I'm like, that is something to like make me feel like, oh, and then he goes on to keep doing it, instead of like, he's gonna go from being pretty much just a cop, granted someone who can punch people that are way bigger than him and they get knocked out, but like, I just feel like I feel like there needs to be some kind of experience in the suit first. Like, we already saw that Bruce Wayne wasn't great in the suit first, like it took a bit, but like, again, that's just me like being like, why not have that fun, but it's whatever. And then yeah, the Talia al Ghul thing, I feel like people always say, why didn't they save Harvey Dent for part 3? But no one ever seems to think it's weird that they're like, literally in the last 10 minutes, oh, it's Talia al Ghul, she's dead. Like, I've never heard anyone complain about that. And it's like, well, she's a villain in her own right as well. She is, and like, she did. I mean, at least with Harvey Dent, I felt like it was like, oh no, like this is a ticking time bomb. Whereas with Talia, it was literally just like, and she's the villain. Like, so ta-da, she died. It's done. I was like, oh, like in the comics, she has Damian Wayne. Like they had sex in this movie. That's a new thing. Like maybe she's pregnant. Nope, they killed her. That's the end of that. Like no one, like it's like just a weird like, and we're at the end. Got to the finish line. We're done.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things is like I feel like this movie is very, very interested in just tying up loose ends. This is like the Talia al Ghul death is one of those biggest things because I can distinctly remember, and I'm not proud of this, but like in the first time I've ever watched this movie, like first time when this originally came out, the Talia al Ghul thing, I was like, oh damn, that was so smart. And then the entire time I was like, how did I not see that coming instead? And then being frustrated, I'm like, wait, why did they do such they did such a convincingly good job of doing the gotcha moment for me there. It's like, she's actually Talia, that I'm like, why was it only dead 10 minutes later? Oh, right, because the story, you're only interested in telling the story from that point on. Like the fact that you're giving this Blake guy, Nightwing, a Gotham, a Batcave, all this kind of stuff for Gotham that's already saved is like, okay, like it's crazy. There's no training process. You're absolutely right. No, whatever. It's a weird beat in that regard where it's like you're just tying things up and then you're opening up this window of like, what if, or this is now the future, and you're not showing us any of that. No. And that sucks. It really does.
Well, I don't care to see. I mean, once it's done, I'm like, I get it. But it's more that I feel it's weird. And I think it says two things that people don't really care about the female characters, but two, that like, there's this weird hypocrisy where it's like, I choose not to see what the actual point of Dark Knight was. And because the whole point is Harvey Dent and the fact that he will be Two-Face. He's called Two-Face throughout the whole thing for a reason. And at no point do you think like, oh, this is a like completely good guy. You know that there's something bubbling underneath, and then it gets exposed, and then you deal with the ramifications of that. Whereas the whole time, Miranda Tate is like, I guess she's just a like philanthropist, and what's the big deal? And then she's like, no, just kidding. I was my dad's daughter the whole time. And it's like, and what was the point of like sleeping with him or like being nice up until that point? Like, I feel like once she takes over the board, that should be when she's like, and I'm fucking Talia al Ghul, and now we've got you.
That would be cool. But I would say that the sleeping with him part, it did add to that final moment of like when Bruce was like, oh, like that stab where she started twisting like that. It did, from a psychological standpoint, did add on top of that, like to be like, oh, you were just like realized everything. So I'm like, did that?
I don't see how
or whatever. But I'm like,
I don't see how, but okay.
Maybe they were clearly interested in psychologically torturing him too, right? So if it was,
but at that point, it's like, ha, got you, and you'll be dead in 10 seconds if her plan worked, as opposed to like having him actually have to deal with that knowledge.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because her plan was, hey, Bane, you and him got to die together now, even though I love him. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
And then Bane's like, I gotta kill you now. I'm like, so you're taking mercy on him, and you're taking the full blast of the heat. What the hell? Like,
I don't think that was mercy. I think that was him being like, she can say what she wants, but this was my plan. I'm doing this.
Oh, I guess I
didn't see that as a mercy at all. I think he's just like, and obviously, I'm not gonna listen to her.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess the implication would have been how fast he would have killed him, as opposed to experiencing that burn.
Well, I think at that point so the point of that, I think I have to kill you now is I already tried the whole I'm gonna break you down mentally and make you watch your city burn, and he's like, and you still came back to get me. Now I have to kill you. So now like we can't play around like that anymore. I have to kill you now.
Bane isn't too smart of a character to be like, yeah.
Like he's like, oh, she didn't see all that other stuff. Like, I mean, she theoretically knows what happens, but I know for a fact you came back stronger than ever. So no, I'm gonna kill you now.
That's a great point. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that's not mercy at all.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. That's him learning from his mistakes, which I do appreciate.
That's what I'm saying. He's a great villain.
So fantastic.
Yeah, like I think that was really well done. That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't suffer from having a villain that's not as good as the Joker. It suffers from putting a great villain in a bad story.
Yeah, that's true. I think I've heard the complaint before that, like, for such a great villain, he has such a shitty death, and I'm like, how else would you have preferred he die?
Exactly.
In the sense where, do you prefer?
He's not going to get punched to death.
Yeah, like, are you going to ask Catwoman to enter the fight and with Batman to do a double team when he's been stabbed in the ribs already? Like, come on, man! Like, just it's everything about that's realistic. No part of that is unrealistic. We're at the point right now where we've shown you that even Batman and him toe to toe, he's barely hanging on. This time he's like, he does nothing different too. He's just like, okay, I'm gonna punch you in the mouth a lot more.
Well, he does do stuff different, because I'm like, I mean, that's the first thing I would have hit, is that fucking thing on his mouth.
Yeah.
And then he didn't do that in the first fight.
He didn't try to do that.
And he was also more like tactful. Like, he was dodging punches instead of just barreling through. So he is different in that fight. But the point is, all that fighting is pointless. And I think I think that Catwoman killing him is character development, or not even development. It's just more character reveals for Catwoman. Is like, we can get along, but we are fundamentally different. Like, you would be happy to keep punching him until maybe he got tired. I feel like I could just shoot him and we're done now. And I kill. You can have your no kill thing. I kill.
Yep. That's fair. Yep. Yeah. No, I always say to people, I'm like, why is that a shitty character death? Because that's the only way the character would have died realistically at that point in the movie. When you're trying to wrap up everything and the bombs
and there's no jail to take him to at this time.
Yeah.
Like, I know they showed people getting rounded up, and I'm like, look, where are they going to take them? He blew up the jail.
Like, would you have preferred that Bruce or like Batman just fly away with Catwoman in the bat, and Bane is just like, no?
Yeah.
And, like, that's terrible. Like, that's way worse. Like, just, this is the most realistic thing. The point of this movie is realism, and this whole trilogy is realism. So realistically, I would have expected Catwoman to be like, oh, hey, this is a guy that Batman couldn't take down. Pew pew pew. You're done.
Yeah.
Totally realistic.
It might be realistic to a fault, but it is realistic. I mean, it's realistic for what the movie is set up. It's obviously a bit heightened, but I do think that is the main issue with these movies as a whole, is that trying to make Batman that realistic kind of puts the shackles on you, to quote this movie. Like, you get put into weird position. I also saw someone say that, like, Dark Knight's a bad movie because it says it's good to have, like, the surveillance state or whatever, and I'm like, no, it's saying that everyone compromised and became just as bad as the Joker in order to beat him.
Yeah.
And then this third movie ostensibly would deal with those ramifications, and it does kind of start with the Dent Act, but like, the movie isn't like a win for Batman. That movie is about how Joker won and got what he wanted. Everyone did the thing they shouldn't do, even though you think it's, oh, Batman didn't kill anyone, but he still took it too far and became the bad guy.
Yep, absolutely.
And like lost the support of, until he didn't, but like in that moment, Fox was like, well, I don't want to work for you then. If this is what you're going to do, you're doing something wrong. And Lucius helps him do it, and so he has to deal with that mentally as well. But it's just like, the movie isn't about like, oh, isn't it cool that Batman won? You are supposed to feel like, holy shit, like,
this is what it costs to win.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. Like, in the beginning of the movie, I do feel like, oh, this is what it costs to win. When you hear about stuff, like, especially when Blake starts going like, so you got all these prisoners, all this kind of stuff, denied bail, all this, like, all these criminals, like, through the Dent Act based on a lie. Like, that's huge. Like, from a social standpoint, that's huge, right? Yeah, sure. Like, we think it's been like the situation where it's like, oh, the Dent Act was good. It gave police.
Well, I don't think you're ever supposed to think the Dent Act is good. That's why the movie starts the way it does. With
right, I get that. But what it doubles down on even criticizing itself, where it's like, oh, this is pretty good at that point, where I do appreciate that they're really dealing with the fallout of that movie, but then it's difficult because it's just doesn't get to be its own movie at some point too.
Yeah, you said it right. There's like a jumbled thing here where there's a bunch of stories they're trying to serve, while also having the overall motto of just get done, just get it done.
Yeah, because it's got to finish its own story beats plus the story beats that it did in Begins and Dark Knight, right? Which is so complicated to do. There's some elements where they do it well, but it's jumbled. It doesn't connect, and that's the issue with this. It just doesn't connect.
I don't know if it doesn't connect so much as it creates issues to solve that could have been avoided if you didn't add those issues in the first place.
Well,
I think like as I said, there's nothing that makes me be like, oh, that was a loose thing. It's just some things get tied up quicker than others, and I do feel that everything gets tied up.
Yeah,
it's just, why did we have to go down some of those roads if this is ultimately where you want it to end up? And that to me makes it a poorly told story of like, and especially doing that underlining thing of this is supposed to be a tale of two cities and like the haves, the have-nots. I'm like, but is that best represented by cops versus bad guys? Like, the end of the that final battle, I'm just like, I mean, and that is my personal feeling now, like especially the year we had last year, 2020.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like I'm like, ugh, yuck. He's with the cops, and that's why I was happy when John Blake was like, "Look, I can't be a cop, man. Like, are you kidding me? No."
Yeah, I appreciate his character so much more because of the stuff we've been through in the past year. Like him being like, "Nope, shackles completely get you. This is holding me back and all this kind of stuff." The representation of police versus like all this kind of stuff, not a good one. In this regard, I wish it was involved more of Gotham, as opposed to like if there was more than just police officers, like there was Gotham citizens that were trapped there and willing to fight back against this.
Well, that's what they're trying to do with the orphans and John Blake. Like,
yes,
they are trying to show that part of it as well. I just feel like he would be better served just fighting with Batman. Like, I don't want any of that, but it is important for him to see, like, and it's one thing, I don't know if they did it on purpose or not, that shows like, yeah, police are more interested in protecting property than people. And so when he goes like, don't cross, and I know that cop thinks he's saving everybody by being like, don't cross, but it is very good at showing you like, realistically, that is the mandate for cops, like protect areas, not necessarily people. And I like that he saw that and was like, oh wow, yeah, like I don't want to be a part of that system.
Yeah, because at that point in time, the world would have known the countdown estimation, like would have been that day, right? So it's just like, okay, if the bomb goes off, like no one's getting off anyways. Like at that point, it's just like abandoned post, right? You have to. You're right that them being like, no, we got to protect this, hold the line, hold the line, hold the line. It's just like, as opposed to, look, we literally have children over here, and like, who's this going to hurt at this point in time? No one. Like, it can't hurt anyone. You can only save a few. It is extremely you're right. I don't know whether or not that was intentional, because you're making me realize that now. It's a great recognition for what they're doing there.
I think now we can get into like why I think it's shit, just from as a Batman fan. Like, I mean, I've already kind of hinted at just the whole like that he gives up, or even that he wants to give up the mantle at any point. Like, it's fine, it's all fine and well to be like, in the first movie, oh, I will just inspire other people and this isn't forever. But if I'm writing it, it's like, you can start that way, and maybe that's a very good plausible deniability of like, I'm getting into this, I won't continue. But like, what I like about Batman in the comics is that Bruce Wayne's like, well, I'll never stop. Like, even Batman Beyond is him being like, you can put on the suit, but I'm telling you what to do. Like, I'm not ever going to be separated from this.
Yeah.
Like,
It's because the thing is, the day Bruce's parents died, it was not just revenge on one thing, it was revenge on crime in general and protection of everyone in Gotham, right? That was his mandate. That's what he wanted
well, yeah,
to do.
that's,
So
I mean,
whatever
I
is-
know that not everyone writes him that way, but
Yes.
what I like about the written character is that there is a way of looking at it is that, yes, he is trying to protect people from losing family and loved
Yep.
ones to violent crime.
Mhm.
Like, that's what I like about Batman, and I understand that's not the defining way, or that's not the like seminal version of him. That's not the take that everyone goes with. It's the
Yep.
take I like, and so that's why I'm like, and that would never end. You would never feel like you could take a break from that.
Yeah, because crime's never done. That's the biggest thing. Like, and that's why I like him in Batman Beyond, because it's like the idea of like, okay, you're right. He's giving it to Terry McGinnis and all this kind of. I'm gonna mentor you, give you all the access to all this kind of stuff, but I'm still fighting crime. Like that, like that's his thing, and I really, really, really love that aspect of it.
There's moments where he's still in his ear, like, no, do this. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like he's very hands-on.
Yes.
But I think I knew going into the movie, I'm not gonna like it if he dies. I'm not gonna like it if he gives up the mantle. I'm not gonna like it if he retires. And I'm like, and he did all three. Like, they did like oh, Batman's dead. I'm like, ugh. And he gave it to John Blake, and he's retired. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair,
that doesn't make it a bad story. I'm saying we're talking about what I don't like as a Batman fan.
Yeah, and to be fair, that was just any one of those things was going to happen. You're absolutely right, because of the movie that they were telling right from.
Well, I mean, the name does not
does not give
convey
you
that. It says The Dark Knight Rises. So I'm thinking, and again, all the ads, everything, the pictures are his broken mask. I'm not thinking, oh, well, he'll probably still be Batman by the end of it. I can read the signs, but the title of it and what I like about Batman is him renewing his vow to keep being Batman. And that would be The Dark Knight Rising. Is
right.
He would be like, oh, like, I found a new reason to keep doing this. And maybe, now he's got Catwoman that he can kind of trust, but really she's doing her own thing and can turn on him at any time. And he's got someone, again, I get people have a problem with Robin, but I still feel like it is a necessary thing to show some kind of humanity and growth from him if you have him have a John Blake there as well.
Yeah, it's a way to include Robin in the story without actually me hating on it, because I didn't want to see Robin in this, and they did it in a way where I'm like, I didn't mind that.
I do mind it, but I just think like, oh, that's nice. I'm like, oh, his name's Robin. That's funny. But what I mean is, like, it's just another like, you just swapped out Commissioner Gordon. Like, I don't like, is that good? Like, he already had that function. This doesn't really mean anything to me outside of, oh, okay, a younger Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, the part I don't like about this is the fact that it just made Gordon such a bumbling kind of.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but yeah, I purposely didn't mention that I like anything to do with Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, because they mistreated that character a lot. I get why they're like, okay, let's write this as both Batman and John Gordon are mentoring John Blake. Like, I get that. Sure, because both of them do teach him stuff about, like, oh, clear their corners, rookie, and all this kind of stuff. I get that stuff, but it just makes it so that Gordon is so mishandled and miswritten in this one.
I mean, the point of doing that would be if you wanted to tell the story of which way is John Blake going to go. Is he going to be a vigilante or a cop? But he seems pretty put off by being a cop for the whole time. And it's more just used to show how shitty Commissioner Gordon was for doing what he did.
Yep.
Which, okay, I don't know why you want to throw your character under the bus like that, but like, okay. In my opinion, it is better to keep having a Commissioner Gordon, the one cop that's still doing the right thing, but kind of relieving both of the guys who've been doing it for, let's say, 9 years, of having John Blake be this new, like, vigilante that kind of comes in and it's like, well, yeah, we need to help him. Like that. I mean, that's also part of the Dick Grayson story, is that he becomes a cop at one point. It's interesting, but it is to be like, I would only like that in sense of like, he's like, yeah, but you can't be effective this way, and that is also the point of Batman. If every story is highlighting how cops are either too corrupt or dumb to be able to effectively do what Batman does.
Yes.
And again, they didn't really tell that story. It's just kind of like, yeah, he's the new Batman, or of sorts.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the Commissioner Gordon stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, he's in a hospital bed. Now he's getting like escorted by John Blake. And it's more just like, yeah, that was really shitty what you did. And I'm like, yeah, we know that already. He knows that. He is actually a character dealing with the consequences on a daily basis. But then you kind of shut it down by making him get defensive about it instead of just being like, yeah, I need to change my ways. But yeah, I do think that the John Blake thing is awkward because I get it. It would never happen in a Nolan movie. He was pretty dead set on Batman being the only superhero. But then I would argue maybe don't put John Blake in it.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not a very effective movie to show us that John Blake is going to be the same level of replacement that Batman's going to be anyways. Like, no. Batman went through League of Shadows training. Like, that's insanity.
Exactly.
Like,
it's exactly what I mean. Like, he got a couple of tips like, hey, hide your face, don't use guns. That's not the same as what Bruce Wayne went through.
No, he got like more like, hey, here are the concepts and reasons for why I do what I do. And it's almost more along the lines of like, oh, when Blake had that monologue where it's like, I knew who you're, this is how I figured it out. I practiced smiling like that too. When he did that, it was almost like Bruce was like, okay, here's tips and tricks of how to be me, as opposed to being like, here, I'm actually going to show you what you need to do. Like, hey, you might need a couple of pointers on how to use these kind of things, or know that it's probably linked to Lucius Fox or something like that. Or maybe you two should network and get to know each other. Well, actually, they were at the funeral. Probably they would have been like, hey, hold on, I figured something out. Do you know this dude? But yeah. Yep. It's just no part of that is sufficient to make me believe that Gotham is safe in John Blake's hands.
Yeah.
No part of it.
But it is good for like a aha moment, but not great once you think about it too long.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just like, oh, great, Gotham is still protected, or is it? Like, you just have a cop that quit. Cop training's obviously not the same. No, you're right. Every Batman story involving the cops goes to show their ineffectiveness, their stupidity, or their corruption. It's just everything. So why tell us that John Blake is capable of doing it when he just quit?
Yeah, it's more just like, yeah, his heart's in the right place. But
that's all it really is. It's like, hey,
you still need the like Batman. Like this is why I know, like, I understand why people don't like Robin, but it's like, if you're doing what they did in Dark Knight Rises, you still need them to work together as vigilantes, because that's how that would work. That is the only way I would be like, okay, he's had time to work with him and show him the ropes. He can move on if he wants.
Yeah, he has one
Instead
fight.
of just being like, hey, go to this address. Didn't even look like John knew what he was getting into. He was just like, oh, I guess I'll just go to this address now.
Yeah, it was just like, literally like, here's what I left you. It was a bunch of spelunking equipment or climbing equipment. Like, and just GPS coordinates. And I'm like, cool, he figured it out. Great. There's no training program in there, man.
There could be a training program. Don't get me wrong. He could have left whatever for him. But
that would be funny.
But it's like, is that better than just watching them work together? Like, you, to the extent you already watched them work with Catwoman, I don't see what the point, like, what is such a big deal of having like a third heat of whatever John Blake decides to call himself.
Yeah. Whether and you know how he like it,
because he's not a little boy that is being like coddled or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's a grown man that's like, oh, I want to fight crime too.
Yeah,
Which is
it
the
would
take
not
of
be like,
Robin I like, not the grown man part, but the whole Batman being like, hey, this guy has the same anger as I do. I need to aim him in the right direction, or that's a potential villain I'm gonna have to face later.
yeah, it's messy in that regard.
Yeah. Messy movie.
Messy.
And
Definitely.
yes, I like to joke about how shit it is, but there are some good points. They even did No Man's Land. That was interesting.
I'm sorry?
They even did No Man's Land where they blow up Gotham, so it's like an island, and everyone and then basically that creates in the comics a part where it's like, here's Joker Town. Here it's like Arkham City, basically. But yeah,
one of the
that was
things
nice.
that the movie, one of the biggest things about the movie that I didn't like is the funeral scene where like Gordon actually goes ahead and reads a quote from A Tale of Two Cities. I'm like, I get what you're trying to do, man. It's just like at this point, you just might as well make A Tale of Two Cities if you're just serving it up like this to us. It's just like in your face. Hey, you guys were watching A Tale of Two Cities as told by Batman. Yeah. And I'm like, that's great. Thank you, Nolan. Just why don't you let us figure that out by ourselves? But I will say
I don't know that if you don't know what Tale of Two Cities is, just because he reads that passage doesn't mean you know that that's from Tale of Two Cities.
For me, I'm complaining personally, not for
but I guess the problem with that complaint is that nothing about that is inherently Tale of Two Cities unless you know Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah, that's fair.
And if you know Tale of Two Cities, I doubt that it only took you until the funeral to figure out they were doing Tale of Two Cities.
No, well, that's what I mean. It's just like for the people that got that, it's just like that quote ended up being like, hey, get it? Get it? It was A Tale of Two Cities.
I mean, maybe, but as I said, like I think it works more for reviewings of like, oh, once you know it and you see how he tied it all together at the end. I mean, I can't control how you feel about it. It's just more like, I don't know. It's not like he said, and it was a tale of two cities, truly. Just said a passage from the book. And I can also see him being like, this reminded me of what Batman was like. He sacrificed himself for the city he loves.
Yeah.
This makes sense to me.
That would have been so fun. Don't get me wrong. The quote is so dead. The passage he reads is actually fantastic for that moment. It is fantastic, but it's just one of those moments where to me it felt like, you guys get it? It was A Tale of Two Cities, and it was was just fun...
to your point though, like it's also why I don't understand why there's so much like dispute over this movie. It is constantly telling you, like signaling to you what it is trying to say. Like there is no real room for ambiguity, to your point of like you know that it's a hallucination when Ra's al Ghul comes back because he disappears on screen. Like it's not, you're not left to be like, wait, did he really come back? Like it's like, no, that was in his head. So like anytime something isn't really happening, like maybe that did happen, but like you have either someone narrating what's happening or like it's a very clear thing. And at the end of the day, in case you didn't get it, this is A Tale of Two Cities. But again, I don't think that works unless you know what A Tale of Two Cities is.
Yeah, I get that. It's homage, but yeah, it's funny to me.
That's Dark Knight Rises.
I
do not like the movie. Other people do.
I'm curious to see what your ranking is.
Let's find out what I would give this movie out of 10. I give it a 6.
Oh, really? Spot on with where I'm at?
Yeah, it's a 6. It's fine. Like I understand what people get excitement out of it. It's not as like overtly bad as other things we've talked about. It's just not well told, but still has enough stuff I like from Batman comics in it and interpolated.
It's I agree. It's a 6. I wish it were higher because I love the trilogy so much that but I am like some people do say like good things don't end well ever. Really, it's not that this is a terrible ending. It's fine. It's fine. It's a 6. I wish it was higher, but
well, I'm basing it more just as a movie.
Yes.
As a
part
capper to a trilogy, sure, like that kind of gives it a bit more credit for tying in a bunch of stuff and committing to the vision of like this was always a story about a guy who just wanted to find a way to inspire his city. So
yeah,
and he did that. And adding the second part of the second movie of like, oh, maybe I could find one person to take over for me. And I know when it was Harvey Dent, it wasn't to be Batman, it was just to be someone who actually tries to put good into the world. And then he probably realized that's not going to happen in that system. So it does need to be someone who literally takes over for me. And that was John Blake. So yes, in that way, it does wrap up the trilogy. It's just a messy movie.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Well, that was lovely. I'm glad we talked about it. Not really. But we do talk about other things, and we do that on the That Shelf Podcast Network. So please head on over there. There's other great podcasts such as Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, Knows About the Nightmare, What a Great Theme Song, and more. So you can head on over there. And we are also on tdfelverything.com/spoiledrotten. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @TDFSpoiled. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Radio Public, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, a whole bunch of things. So please go there, rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. That's all I have to say about that. Goodbye, everybody.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.